We will structure this demo in multiple steps, right? First, I'm going to take you through a few slides where I'm going to describe what EDIS is and what EDIS is not. And then I'm going to jump into a product, and we're going to go through some of the interfaces of EDIS, look at the structure, look at the different things that we can do, right? And then we're going to wrap it up after the demo. If you have any questions, let me know, right? And then we can schedule another part after this, right? So let's start first with a few slides that will establish some context into EDIS. So the first thing is that EDIS is the K-12 data productivity platform. So why we call it data productivity, right? I think during this presentation you will learn why the word productivity is so important. But the mission of the company is to help the different K-12 teams. And when we say teams, I mean district administrators, principals, teachers, parents, anybody that is part of that support team of a student. So to help teams, right, get the data insights that they need, and also the tools that they need to take action on top of those insights in order to make the students improve, right, and to have everything in one place. So first, let's start with the problem. So the problem is that a lot of our school districts say to us that working with data takes a lot of time. So that means that sometimes they have to put together data that it's coming from different sources. So that data might be coming from a student information system, the state assessments, even like assessments that they do at school, right, for the students. So the data, it's spread out into multiple locations. It takes a lot of time to put all that data together in one place. That is something that EDIS will do automatically, right? The second problem is that only a few people in the district really understand how to do reporting. And what ends up happening is that a lot of different users end up going into the same person to request data. And that creates a bottleneck, and it's not productive. And that person is typically very overworked and very stressed out during a lot of manual collection of data, where EDIS can do all of that automatically for you. The third thing is that the data sources that EDIS uses to connect to, they're completely disconnected. And sometimes they're built in different systems. Sometimes they're built in different ages. So you can have, for example, a very modern application where perhaps the students can test their math and English skills. And sometimes they're dealing with a student information system that was built in the 1980s and runs in a mainframe computer. So very disconnected systems, and putting the data together, it's a very hard task. The third thing is that a lot of our users go and turn into what's called the data interoperability frameworks. So there is frameworks established to put all the data in one place, right? But those frameworks are really good in theory, but the way they have been implemented, it's not very clear. So the users end up with a lot of data gaps, right? And they also don't account for customizations. So just to give you an example, you can have a school district and another school district, and they're probably like 5 or 10 miles away from each other, very close to each other. They might have the same systems, the same products, but their data looks different because they have implemented them differently. So that creates another layer of complexity on top of all of that, right? So that is the problem that we're dealing with, and that's why EDIS exists. So I want you to see EDIS as a 3-story building. So this is a building that has 3 stories. In the first story of that building, it's what we call the real data interoperability. I'm going to dig deep into that. In the second story, there's a longitudinal and real-time data warehouse. And then in the third story, there's a network of interconnected applications that use all of that data. So let's go one story at a time. So in the first story of the building, right, let's say the basement of the building, we have a data interoperability framework. And what we use for these is that we have a process, right? Whenever a district installs EDIS, we install the EDIS operator. And that is a piece of code, automatic, that wakes up, let's say at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, when the systems of the district are less utilized. We're all sleeping at night, and then EDIS wakes up automatically and goes and tries to connect to all the data sources of the district, right? So this can be the student information system, which is in our industry is called the SIS, student information system. That is the main system that all the school districts run on, right? And there's 4 or 5 very popular SISs in the country. EDIS connects to all of them, right? So we extract data from the student information system. We can also extract data from their learning management systems, from their state tests, from any local tests that they have done on the student. And we can connect directly to third-party systems. We can connect through APIs, and we can also connect directly to files and extract the data from files. Whatever the case here is that raw data, right, it's going to come in automatically through a pull mechanism. So EDIS is pulling the data, right? And then it goes into a stage that is called the data cleanup. And this is a stage that's super important in EDIS because we use it to eliminate inconsistencies in data, right? So sometimes, for example, in the US, when we put together a date, we use the day of the month, the month, the day, and the year. But in our home countries, we use the day first, the month later, and the year. So sometimes if the data entry person is Hispanic, like us, they might enter the data incorrectly, and they might record, for example, that, hey, Karen had a behavior incident today at 10 a.m., and that date is incorrect, right? So EDIS has a mechanism to correct the inconsistencies in dates. EDIS has a mechanism to detect duplicates in the data. So if somebody entered the same record twice, so EDIS has a mechanism to detect if the student ID is incorrect. Even mechanisms to fix the capitalization of the letters. So sometimes people write math, M-A-T-H, in uppercase, and it's like feels like the data it's screaming at you, right? EDIS fixes all of that, so it capitalizes the letters correctly. The objective of this cleanup stage is that the data should look consistent and beautiful, right, when you're analyzing it. The third stage, it's called the calculation stage. So in this stage, EDIS has a lot of built-in formulas to interpret the data and create key performance indicators. So I'll give you an example. For our school district, it's really important to keep track of attendance. So you don't want students to miss more than 10% of their instructional time. So that means the attendance rate of a student has to be above 90%. So if a student starts getting close to that 90% of attendance, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. The student might have problems understanding a concept, right, etc. So EDIS has built-in formulas to flag students, right, and say, hey, this student has 94% attendance rate. Let's send a flag and let the school know that, hey, you know what, 20% of your students are missing 10% of more of instructional time. You should be able to take action on that, right? So that is that calculation stage. The next stage, which is PD, which stands for professional development, it's intended to connect those key performance indicators here to professional development resources. That is something that we have not been able to use with our customers. Most likely, I'm going to end up taking this away from the diagram because it's just too, how do I say it? It's too aggressive, and some of our districts don't really have the knowledge, right? But the objective of that stage was to be able to say, hey, you have X% of your students are experiencing, let's say, bullying in school. This is some learning resources that you can use in the internet to deal with bullying in your school, right? That was the objective, right? But we were never able to really capitalize on that objective. The next stage, right, is all the information that gets calculated in here goes into two different destinations. First is the EDIS application, so the web application of EDIS. And second, it's what we call the email insights. So basically, EDIS will send an email every at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the day, or at the beginning of the month with a summary of those KPIs that were calculated. So the objective here is that if you are, let's say you're the director of a school and you're super busy, you don't have time, right? Like in our schools here in the US, the school principals are always walking with a walkie-talkie in their hand, and they're always like, hey, this student beat up this other student or whatever, right? So they're very busy. They don't have time to be looking at data, right? EDIS, what it does is like every Monday morning, you'll get an email in your inbox, right? That says, hey, this is how your school did last week, right? If you see everything in red, you should probably take action. If you see everything in green, that means everything is okay. You can go on with your life, right? You don't have to lose time. You don't have to waste any time looking for data. So going back to that initial slide of productivity, right? Being able to send data by email, right? And fix all the time that it takes to integrate all this data in one place. It's part of why what we call EDIS, the data productivity platform. So that is the first story, right? Being able to connect to all of these systems and extract the data. The second story of that building is, where do you store the data? Where do you put it, right? Once you're aggregating all this data in one place, you have to store it somewhere. So EDIS has what we call a longitudinal data warehouse. So EDIS can store multiple years of data in one single data store, right? Now, what happens is like our districts, many times they need to look at data and analyze it over time, historically, right? Are we getting better in attendance? Are we getting better in math, right? So in order for in order for our districts to do this, EDIS offers a concept that is called a moment. And what is a moment, right? A moment is a point in time where EDIS is going to freeze your data, right? Take a snapshot of that data, right? And then keep going after that, right? So what happens here is that, for example, our typical school district, they use about 5 moments every year. The beginning of the school year, the fall, which is when you start doing testing on the students, which is probably around this time of the year, right? The students, the school districts start collecting data through tests, right? Just to establish a baseline for the rest of the year. So that is the second moment, fall. Then there's the winter. So about January, February, they do another test just to get a little bit of a snapshot of, hey, this is how our students are doing in the middle of the school year. That's called the winter season. Then there's the spring, which is closer to April and May, towards the end of the school year, right? And then there's the end of the school year, which is kind of like the last day of the students at school, which is before all of those systems have to roll over to the next school year. So you get 5 moments in time. If you have been with EDIS for 7 years, 5 times 7, right? You get 35 different moments. So basically all your graphics, right? You're going to have 35 elements in the x-axis so that you can really compare how your data it's doing over time. And EDIS does this automatically, right? You don't have to do anything as a school district. You just have to say to EDIS, these are the dates that I would like to freeze my data. And then EDIS wakes up that day and it says, okay, is this the date? Yes. Let's freeze the data, right? And let's move forward, right? So that is the second story, right? So basically at this point, we have integrated all the data from all the systems. We are storing it in a safe and secure location, historical, right? But at this point, who can use the EDIS data? Only people who are like a data analyst or a programmer, right? Somebody that knows how to write queries into a database, right? Not a lot of people can do that, and those people are typically very expensive, right? So that's when we built the third story of that building, right? And then the third story of the building are all the different applications that are built on top of EDIS that use that data, but they all talk to each other, right? So for example, the dashboards, right? In EDIS, you can build dashboards with the data that is coming from all of those systems. There's an early warnings system, right? And this is a famous word in education, early warning system. And what it means is you want to be able to collect those KPIs that I talked about, like is the student missing an instructional time? Is the student failing in a class, right? But not only the negative indicators, also the positive. So if a student has like A grades in all the subjects, you want to collect that also as a warning system, but it's a positive warning, right? So that you can reward the students, right? So it's not only to see the negative things, but also to detect the positive things, right? And reward them as well. Flip data, right? It's what we call the application that sends the emails, right? So flipped, as in like, hey, it's the all the way around. Instead of you looking for data, data will go to you. There's the student profile. So you'll be able to see the data only for that one student, right? And see the different sections historical of the data. There's a tool where you can build forms inside EDIS, and you can connect those forms to the data in EDIS. We're going to go through all of that. There's a tool that is called data stories, where you can assemble a document in EDIS and have content and data in the same place, right? So that whoever is understanding the data can see it as a story, right? There's what we call the RTI and MTSS. So warning here on the acronyms, right? RTI means response to intervention. And I'm going to send you links to all of these documents so that you can understand what this is. So response to intervention, RTI. And then there's also MTSS, which stands for multi-tiered systems of support. I'm going to send you all of this, right? Don't worry about this. But what it means is that once you're sitting on top of all this data in EDIS, you can create a plan for a student, right? You can say, hey, Karen has 80 points in this assessment. I would love for her to have 88 at the end of the school year, so a 10% improvement, right? You do that through RTI, through response to intervention. You're going to say, I'm going to sit with Karen for 15 minutes every day, and I'm going to hammer on the concepts that Karen is not understanding, right? And then I'm going to measure every week through a test how Karen is progressing towards that goal, right? And then that's going to build a timeline, right? A chart of progress. That's what we call RTI, response to intervention. Now, the terms are interchangeable. Some people call it RTI, some people call it MTSS. So MTSS means multi-tiered system of support, which means multiple tiers, right? So what it means is, for example, if you're a teacher and you're teaching 20 students in your class, that is what it's called your tier one. So in education, when you hear my tier one is your entire class, all the students together, right? Then tier two are students that might be falling behind a little bit, right? Like, hey, this student is not reading that much for his grade level, right? It needs an intervention, right? So that's when the teacher sets you apart and teaches you, about the concepts that you're not getting. Sometimes in the schools, they have what they call an interventionist, which is a person that is not a teacher, right? But it's a person that is in charge to just set the student apart for like 15, 20 minutes every day and teach them about a specific concept so that the students can catch up with the rest of the class, right? So that is what is called RTI and MTSS. All of that is built into EDIS, right? Then there is a testing platform in EDIS. So in EDIS, you can create a test with questions, right? And then assign that test to a student. The student can take the test online. You can collect the data from the test. That's all built into EDIS. And then last, there's a tool that is called the Family Portal, which allows the parents to log in and see the progress of their students, right? So all of these applications, they talk to each other, right? You can jump from the student profile into an intervention. You can jump from a form into a student profile. So they're all interconnected. And that is the magic of EDIS, right? Just to give you an idea of the landscape of the market. The only companies that can really do this are really big education companies. And they have done it because they have bought other companies, right? So they have gone in and say, hey, I am a data analytics platform. I need to have an RTI company. They go and they buy an RTI company, and they basically make it part of their offering. But that typically has a lot of problems because you cannot really integrate one tool with the other, right? In EDIS, everything is in one place, right? So that's the idea, right? So just to do a little recap of these, right? EDIS, it's the data productivity platform. It relies on looking at real problems that the districts have working with data, right? It feels stressful, right? It integrates all this data in one place through mechanisms of extracting data automatically. It stores the data in a database that is historical using moments. And then it has a network of multiple applications that work on top of that data, right? Does it make sense so far? Okay, great. Let's jump into EDIS really quick, right? So this is our demo account, right? If you are in EDIS, you can log into EDIS. The district will give you your URL for EDIS. So, for example, if you're the school district of Charlotte, right, you will be able to, if you see here, it says Charlotte County Public Schools, right? So if you are, for example, we have another district here in the state of Maine, right? It will be like this, right? We have another district, I think here is New York, right? It will look like this, right? So each school district has its own URL. Right? So looking at the demo, right? Demo. You can sign into EDIS either using your Google account, because a lot of our school districts are either Google or Microsoft when they log in, right? We support both of them. And then we also support other ways of logging in, but we don't prioritize them much, right? Because they're typically like older school districts, have like Active Directory, like really old technology. Most of our school districts today are either Google or Microsoft, right? And it's no different than when you use your Google account to sign up for any service, right? So when you click signing with Google, right, you're going to get a lot of different, you're going to choose the email that you want to use to log in. This is when the user uses their school or their district email to log into EDIS, right? Now, because I know your email address, I also know what students you can see in EDIS, right? Because EDIS integrates the data. So that is the first thing. In EDIS, you don't have to say, Karen can see this 20 students. You don't have to. EDIS extracts that information automatically from the student information system, right? So, for example, if you're a teacher in a school district and you get a new student in your class, the next day when EDIS does the data sync, you will get that student and you'll be able to see the information of that student. If you have a student that leaves the school district or moves into another class, you will be able to see it. You will not see it anymore. You don't have to manually handle the relationship between users and students. It's all automatically in EDIS, right? So, for example, here, the basic structure of EDIS is you have a top navigation bar. You have a link to your homepage. So if you click on the EDIS owl, you'll go back to your homepage, right? There's a search built into it, right? So for example, if I search for the name of a student, right? The search is going to come in, and probably the demo, it's like really slow right now. I don't know why. Probably like rebuilding it as we speak. Let me see. One second. Let me just text really quick here. I don't know why the demo it's super slow. Give me 1 second. Let me just stop here.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's. I'm gonna ask the team here why the demo it's super slow, but it's loading now. It was probably like caching at the beginning of the morning. Let me see. Share. All right. So can you see my screen now? Great. So in EDIS, right, if you see here, it says 16,384 students. That is because I'm logged in as the EDIS user, and you can see the entire school district, right? But then from here, so that is the top user, right? In EDIS, the different users types, right? You have what's called the super user. So super user can see everything. It can go into the settings of EDIS and change the configuration, right? Basically, what I like to say to my districts is, be careful who you give the super user role to, because this person can break EDIS. This person can go there, click on the setting, right, and say, hey, don't integrate data anymore, right? It can break a lot of things in EDIS, right? So only a few people in the district have that super user power. And these, from a customer success perspective, right, this will be your ally, right? The person that it's a super user, it's the person that knows how to use EDIS the best. That is probably 90% of your interaction will be with that person, with the super user, right? We also do an EDIS user for every installation that it's a super user that allows you to log in and see, right? So you see here, this person is seeing 16,000 students. Why? Because the person can see the entire district. And that takes me to the next user role, which is a district administrator. So a district administrator can see the entire school district, including all the schools that are inside that school district, right? So that person is the district superintendent, the directors of technology, directors of learning, right? Like people who have like a really high role in the school district. They have what is called the district administrator role. And then once you go down one level, you have the school administrator role. So this is the principal of a school, the sub-principal, right? There's a lot of different roles, assistant principal, right? These are people who are anchored to one specific school, but they are administrators of that school. When they log in into EDIS, they can only see their school. They cannot see another person's school, right? And that is by law. In the US, you cannot see students that you're not impacting, right? Because of privacy and all of that, right? So the third level is the teacher. So when a teacher logs in here, they will not see 16,000. They will see probably like 20, 25, because those are the students that you are teaching. That is your class. And then there's the parent. When the parent logs in, they only see probably like 1, 2, 3 kids, right? And then they choose which student they want to click on. And then they have a different user experience. We'll focus on that later. And then there's the student that can also log in and see his or her own progress. So the basic structure of EDIS, right? You have the top navigation bar, right? You also have a search. So for example, if I type for a student name, right, I should get a result. And I think what's actually slow is a search. All right, I should get a result of the student, right? And then I click on that student and I jump into the student profile. So if you remember that network of applications that I was showing you, right? I went from the data dashboards into the student profile with one click, right? It's a different application, right? Now you're inside the student profile, right? And you can see the different topics, right? You will get familiarized with these topics, right? Like, for example, academics, it's all the historical academic data. So math, reading, science, civics, history, right? Everything that is academic will show in there. Then you have your attendance tab. That is for all the historical attendance data. Then you have your behavior tab. So behavior, it's all the incidents that deal with behavior that the student has had in the past. And then there's more tabs, right? There's a tab for your custom cards. That's a little bit more advanced. We'll get to that later. The forms, the intervention, right? There's a lot of things, right? So just know for now that the student profile, it's the application that takes all the EDIS data, but only for one student, and it puts it in one place, right? So going back into the structure of EDIS, right? So you click on the owl, right? That gives you the EDIS homepage, right? If you search, you're going to be able to search for a student. You can also search for the name of a report. You can search for everything, right? The concept here is that typically in the school districts, applications that have a lot of content, they get to be very complicated, and then you have like a menu and then a sub menu inside that menu, right? And it's madness to find information. That's why I search. It's really important, right? Then you have a shortcut here, which is the little user here that takes you directly to your student. So that is a shortcut, right? Anywhere you are in the EDIS application, you click on that shortcut and it will take you to the list of your students, right? Then you have a tool to add and remove different pages from your favorites, right? So if you have pages that you visit a lot, you want to add them to your favorites, right? Then you have your data tab. So your data tab will have a lot of different tools inside of EDIS, right? That take you through, that deal with data, right? So you have your dashboard. There's a dashboard library. So it's like a library of multiple dashboards, right? There's the report library. There's a lot of different tools that are related to data, and you're going to be able to learn what all of those tools are, right? There's the assessments tab, which has what it's called the custom assessments. So custom assessments means it's a way for you to enter assessment data without EDIS having to connect to it. So sometimes people just want to enter their own things and they don't want EDIS to connect to anything, right? That's when they do it. And then there's the testing platform, which is part of the assessments tab, but it's a separate product, right? So in here, if you're using the testing platform, you'll be able to create questions, create tests, assign a test to a student. All of that happens in here under the testing engine. Then there's the forms. Then there's the interventions, which is that RTI and MTSS tool that I talked to you about, right? Where you can just build plans for your students. And then there's the teacher evaluation module, which only a few districts really use it, right? And it's like a very advanced mechanism to say, is this teacher being effective, right? What is the rating of the teacher, right? In the US, some states in the country, the teacher makes more money if the students are doing better, right? So whether that is right or wrong, right? I don't have an opinion on it, but we have a product to keep track of that, right? And then here on the right side, there's your user, right? And then you have like your different things, your settings, right? Your groups, your teams. So there's a lot of different things in here, right? Your administration, your settings. You can go and get support, right? So this is where that help center is going to come in. You'll be able to get help from here, right? So moving on, right? That is the top navigation bar. That top navigation bar, it's going to be present in 99% of all the pages in EDIS. You will see that top navigation bar, right? So if you go, for example, under your data dashboard, right? So this will be the homepage of EDIS, right? Now, we are working on a new project right now to establish what it's called a homepage. And that will be the first tab always of your dashboard. So that means that for any new user, any new customer of EDIS, you will be able to use that first tab as data combined also with content, right? So you will be able to say, hey, welcome to EDIS, right? This is the homepage. So as part of your onboarding, once you get ready to start like onboarding new customers, this will be your friend, this tab. Because this is where you'll be able to say, hey, this is the stage that we are right now with EDIS, right? We just uploaded this data, right? These are the news, right? There's the new data that has come in, right? This is your place where you can really, you are sure that every person that logs into EDIS will see this page. But this is where you are really in control of what happens in here, right? Then as a user, I can decide how many topics I want to have in here, right? So I'll give you an idea, right, of how quickly it is to do it. So if I add a topic, right, and I'm just going to say Karen demo, right? I can add a description, right? This is a description. Create, right? What it builds an empty page, right? And now I can just click in here and I can start adding data visualizations to this topic, right? So I can add two types of data visualization mainly, right? Either data stories or data widgets. So I'm just going to show you something really basic here, right? So if I type demographics, which is the most basic piece of information ever, right? You can say, for example, gender, home languages, race. Let's see, ELL, right? So if you see here, EDIS is building dashboards for me, right? So what this tells me is that out of these 16,000 students, right? If I click here, right, I know that almost 93% of them speak English as the main language, right? So every time I'm in here, I can also like organize it. If you see here, I can drag and drop my data widgets, right? I can move it in here, right? So you can organize your dashboard however you want. In here, you're going to have dashboards for behavior, for attendance, for anything that the district wants. And then each one of these things, right? For example, here, right? Like almost 14% of the students are Asian, right? You click here, you click on view details, and then EDIS opens a new tab for you, and it drills down into that specific data visualization, right? And now you don't have many. In one page, you only have one, right? And it will say, hey, you know what? This is the widget, right? And then these are the students, right? And then now you can say, well, show me only those students who are Asian, right? And you click here, and it redoes it again, right? You should probably see a pie chart that has only one color, right? And then you see only one color because you filtered by Asian students. And then you will see here like all the different students. And then from here, you can click on any student, right? And it will drill down into that student profile. So if you see like dashboard connecting to student profile. So every time you see the student name, it should be clickable. You should click on it, right? It's like Facebook, right? You see the person's name, you click on it, you go to the profile. The same case in here, right? So that is the data dashboard, right? Then I think what I'm gonna do now, because I know we've been more than an hour already talking about this, I'm going to wrap it up in here with the basic structure of EDIS. The only extra thing that I want to share with you is the filter, right? And then we're gonna do separate sessions to just go through like all the different components, right? But just know, like in anywhere in EDIS that you are showing data, you should be able to click on this filter, and then it will tell you all the things that you can filter by. For example, here, school, right? These are all the different schools. So if I click here, show results, right? Now EDIS is going to filter in real time, and it's going to give me only 108 students, right? Because it's filtering by only these school, right? And you can go down by school, by the grade level of the student, the name of the teacher, right? You can keep going down and down and down to like every single detail, right? And really take any visualization to the point where you exactly want it, right? So just to do a little recap of the structure of EDIS, right? You have your top navigation bar that has all your menus, right? It has your shortcut to the home page, your search. The more proactive you become with EDIS, the more you're going to use that search, right? So you're going to find yourself like the easiest way. So if somebody says to you, hey, Karen, this student here, it's not showing the data correctly, right? There might be something that's broken inside EDIS. You're going to go log into that district, go to search, and then type the name of the student, right? Your recommendations are going to show up. Then you're going to click on the student and see what is going on, right? So that is the structure of EDIS, right? Top navigation bar, shortcut, search, one-click access to your student list. And if you see here a little detail, I went from the dashboard into this report. It's still the 108 keeps in there. So the filter carries over from page to page. So as you're filtering, right, you don't lose the filter when you leave the page. The filter stays in there with you. So then there's the menu, right, where your data tab, your assessments, your forms, your interventions, your evaluations, and then there's the main user menu where you're going to do things like creating student groups, creating user teams, right? There's a lot of stuff that you're going to be able to drill down. EDIS is a very big system. It does a lot of different things. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed at the beginning. Just know the structure, the story behind it, right? Remember, the alternative of using this, it's you having to go to like a lot of different systems, right? And then do an export here, an export in there, and then go into Excel and then match it, right? It's very complicated. So I'll wrap it up in there.